The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. We are back. Second guest of the day, Matthew Dibiase, an old friend. And when I say an old friend, not just a Facebook friend. Matthew is a true friend of Comfortably Zoned. And love you, Matthew.
I love you too, Ralph, man. Love you too, man.
All right. We've had some very, very heavy discussions over the years. And if anybody has an interest, just go to YouTube, Comfortably Zoned, Matthew Dibiase. Just punch all those three things in, and you'll find some wonderful podcasts where we keep it real, as we joked before going on the air, but we really do. And I'm going to cut to the chase a little bit. We all know what's happened. We all know the situation we're in. First of all, is it an inevitable happening right now that Trump's judge is going to be approved?
Well, unless there's some type of miracle and a couple of the GOP members of that committee go into comas or they get put on ventilators, they got the votes. I mean, it's just that's the hardcore fact about it. I mean, just the votes are there. I mean, they would not have held that hearing unless they knew for an absolute certainty that they had the votes. I mean, there was a threat of something like Susan Collins of Maine, defecting. They hope that the Democrats hope that Romney might have objected, but no, he's gonna confirm Barrett. So they're going to go forward with this. In a sense, they want to ramrod this nominee through and tip the scales. Yeah.
I have a theory. What they did to Barack was absolutely disgusting. He had a year in, but what they're doing is now, when they have the power, is their right, their legal right. They are just not playing tit for tat. And it's not as simple as that. They do have the right to do this. So it's not like the Democrats, the Republicans had the right to do it with Obama. They didn't. But two wrongs don't make a right. So I've almost accepted the fact that she is going to be nominated. And I hope that they'll find, if Biden is elected, they will find some way of evening up the odds, more justices on the Supreme Court, and this, that, and the other thing. But what really scares me is that what are we going to do if Biden loses? Trump gets affirmation. We've talked about how it is. We talked about why it is. But what if? We never played that game before. Is there any coming back from that, or is this going to be a civil war?
No, there's no coming back from it. In a sense, their democracy dies if he, is quote unquote reelected, probably by chicanery, by judicial fiat, using his 6-3 majority in the Supreme Court. Then democracy is dead. I mean, you might as well abandon the pretense. And in a sense, absolute power is granted. Congress becomes irrelevant. Even the courts become irrelevant because they're enabling his fascist grandiosity. The COVID-19 continues to ravage the country, destroying mostly those people who he wants to destroy anyway. African Americans, Latinos, basically not the non-white population of this country, and anyone else who is susceptible from it. I mean, if you go, I think they talked about it. If you went with herd immunity, the final death toll, I think it comes to 6 million. If you would just allow this thing to ravage, in other words, just to acquire herd immunity, 6 million people die. And there's an
what's incredible about that number is that you and I identified Trump. Well, not me. You identified Trump early on, years ago now, at least 2 years we've been talking about this, as Hitler reincarnated. And on one level or another, this guy was going to... And I went initially, we've talked about this, I'm Jewish. I thought even talking about that was sacrilegious, as if I could be religious in any way. I'm Jewish by culture. But it threw me back, and took me a long time to come around to this guy is Hitler. But the 6 million is allegedly how many Jews he killed in the concentration camp, give or take 40 or 50. And if this is what, and I've also said for a long time, people aren't wearing masks, and there's nothing that's going to give them confidence to take the vaccine, even if it's developed. And they can't get it to people anyway. So it's going to be a herd immunity, I always thought. Mix that in with literally the end of democracy. What does that mean for you and I, the working, you, the audience, Johnny Lunchbucket, authors, candlestick makers, podcasters? What does this mean for our lives? What would this mean? Could you put it into words how scary this is?
It's very frightening. In fact, I think regardless of the outcome after Election Day, I think you're going to see some type of wave of Trumpian vigilante violence. I would say it wouldn't surprise me if there's in the days after November 3rd, there's some type of 21st century equivalent of a Kristallnacht. In other words, his vigilantes, attacking synagogues, attacking African American churches, attacking Latino churches or Latino communities, gay bars or women's advocacy things or Planned Parenthoods. I think some type of mass shooting, any type of African American protest that his Klansmen and his militias break out their shotguns and their semiotic weapons, automatic weapons, and they start mowing people down. Some type of a massacre, a Kent State type massacre.
And they are in cahoots with the police from hither to yon, from where I live to where you live. These people are backed up by the police. So
I know. Those who believe in Trump. I'm not knocking all police, because I think the other day in Philadelphia, Rob, I don't know if you saw this, but there was amongst the police union and all that. There's also a police union dealing with African Americans and Latinos, and they challenged their own union leaders, saying, "You endorse Trump. We do not endorse that," and we ask our members to withhold their union dues as a means of protest. So not all police are in lockstep, in supporting the Fuhrer and all that. No, they're individuals, and all that. But I think what you're going to see, I think in those pro-Trump states, what you're going to see is with police connivance, they're going to allow his vigilantes to wreak havoc. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me on Election Day, you see reports like in the deep southern states like Georgia, Florida, where the Republicans are in control. You see his vigilantes driving their cars through those long lines of people. I mean, you're already seeing long lines now with early voting, but I think on Election Day proper, some type of violence and interdiction, like in the ancient Reconstruction days, in the 1870s, immediately after the Civil War, where you had the brand new Ku Klux Klan literally committing overt violence against the newly freed African American slaves and all of that. It wouldn't surprise me. I'm anticipating that, Ralph, and it makes me very apprehensive.
You know what scares me, Matthew?
Yeah.
Today is October 14th, and Trump had a rally, and he referred to Barron, his recovering son, after weeks of not talking, I mean, he got the disease and he's allegedly cured of the disease and nothing was mentioned of it. He doesn't talk about, he didn't come to Jesus when his own family got it. You know, if you know what I mean.
No, they never do.
But that is so, I'm a father, and I have loved ones in my life. And if my kid came down with it and it were my fault, and it was definitely, he brought it to the table for his kid, and you can't blame anybody but him, and his no remorseful response sent shivers up and down my spine, because what's he going to care about? He'll never care about the other kids, let alone we Americans, we humans. It's positively scary as fuck if this guy gets reelected. And I don't see it logically. The polls have it. I mean, I'm always checking up to the moment, you know, this, that, and the other thing. Sometimes I think the news outlets just want to keep it interesting. They're not saying we declare a victor right now, but by all rights, unless Socrates was right about it, that we get as leaders what is represented among us or amongst us. I'm thinking Biden's going to win, but it's. You know, I've always got the what if, and until he's gone, and until he abdicates the throne, so to speak, on the 20th of January, I won't feel good. I'll wake up every morning and I'll go, what's he doing now as a lame duck?
Yeah. But, you know, you talked about Barron and the outer lack of feeling. I'm not surprised at all. I mean, Ralph, I want to expound on something for a moment. I mean, I wanted to put this up on Facebook, but you right here, you kind of open up a door for me. Let me say this. I'd like to say this to the listeners. Rule number one in a dictatorship, everyone is dispensable and disposable like Kleenex except for the dictator. Doesn't matter if they're family or blood or not. In a dictatorship, everyone is dispensable and disposable except for the dictator. Everyone is supposed to sacrifice and lay down their lives for the dictator. This dictator never sacrifices for anyone else. The only thing the dictator sacrifices is other people's innocent lives. You see, dictators sacrifice and gamble with innocent people's lives every single day. It could be in the tens or the 20s or the hundreds or the 100,000s or even the millions. That's what they do, from Mao to Stalin to Hitler to Saddam Hussein to Napoleon. That's the thrill of being the dictator, is always gambling with other innocent people's lives. And they're quite willing to sacrifice hundreds, tens, thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions on the altar of their megalomania. And the only thing that can stop them is death, either natural or unnatural, as it were, because they never stop. It's like a serial killer. Serial killers never, ever stop until they are killed or arrested and put up behind bars, in a sense. So when you're dealing with monsters, there is no real bottom. You think they can't get any lower? Guess again. There's always the newest low. I mean, and it's always.
But how much lower? It's your son. It's one son.
Yeah.
How much lower do you expect him to get after that?
Even more lower.
That's why I was chilled. I mean, what could you imagine being lower?
Well,
He's already kept kids in concentration camps, or if not concentration camps.
ICE camps, but hey, you can call it that. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, considering the squalid conditions, I mean, hey, you can call it that. I mean, you can change the name all you like, but it's still a concentration.
Put a thought that I've had to rest. I've always heard in the back of the news when they say it, Obama was retaining kids, was keeping kids as well. Is that true?
I never heard anything like that, but I'm not denying it, but I never heard of such a thing as my own. But I don't even think even Obama ever sank to that level of utter depravity in keeping kids in horribly unsanitary conditions.
Separating kids, if not keeping them in cages.
I never recall seeing such a thing on the news.
I'm gonna have to Google that, but that's at this point. That's just a footnote in my brain coming up with things. Does Roberts have the power to change things as the head? In other words, could he change the ramrodding of if he thinks it's a ramrodding? Of the election, could he say no? That's not right.
Well, I mean, if he really believed that Trump was overstepping his bounds and he's got a majority, then if he can form that majority, then the ruling is there. The question is this: how do you enforce it, though? I mean, you could issue a ruling telling Trump, "Go screw yourself. You lost. Now live with the shame of it." But is Donald the Fuhrer actually going to live with the shame of that? Is he going to accept that meekly and mildly?
Yeah.
That's a different kettle of fish. I mean, hey, when in 1828, when Chief Justice John Marshall told Andrew Jackson that he could not evict the Cherokee Indians from the lands in Georgia, that the Cherokee could still live in their lands, Jackson deliberately and blatantly violated it. He said, "Sure, Mr. Justice Marshall has made his ruling. Let's see him enforce it," because he had no power to enforce it. The enforcer is actually the executive branch, meaning the president, and Jackson led the Indians on the Trail of Tears. So it's, I mean, you could make a ruling. I mean, that would be beautiful if the court did say to Trump, "No, you lost fair and square, punk. Now live with the shame." But it depends. Will his vigilantes accept that court ruling, considering the fact that they're dedicated to overthrowing the rule of law? I mean, even kidnapping governors. I mean, I heard the other day it wasn't just a Michigan governor. They were going to kidnap Virginia. Yeah, him too. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if there's even more to that. I mean, if I'm a Democratic governor of a battleground state, and I would ask my state police, I need more security, my friend, because I think this is just the thin edge of a wedge. I think there's more. With those idiots, those vigilantes like that, I think it's even wider than that, because I think I saw on MSNBC the affidavit said, this is just a small sample of the evidence that we require, meaning there's a lot, they got a lot more on tape, and it would be interesting to see the fuller ramifications and permutations of that, Michigan conspiracy, because I wouldn't.
Well, the Michigan one was the same as the Virginia one. I was relieved to see that it was the same bunch of folks.
Yeah.
And got to give the FBI credit where credit is due.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was scary what they proposed. I mean, they were going to blow out a bridge to lure the police and fire away, and then they were going to do a commando attack on Governor Whitmer's vacation home, and they were going to. And it's interesting. They were going to cross state lines into Wisconsin to do her lynching. Interesting, Wisconsin of places. Yeah, where Rittenhouse crossed over. I mean, kind of interesting. That they were going to take her there of all places to lynch her. Basically, it was a lynching.
When I said that about the police, Rittenhouse had the police permission to go back home after he mowed down those 3 people or whatever it was.
I know. I mean,
and you're right. I want to say too that I agree with you what you said. Not all police are bad, But I'll tell you what, if the system is bad, it's not the individual policeman for sure, but for sure it's the system. Because if you don't have a system where more policemen are reporting what they see is wrong, we're seeing these things, 7, 8 policemen standing around where a guy has his foot on the throat or back or shoots people in the back. Where are the policemen that go, wait, that's not right, I'm going to shoot you?
I know. Yeah.
Too few of those. Too few. And when you say police union, and even black police union, what is the responsibility of a union is to back up their members, right or wrong.
I know. It just, it's that code of silence and all that.
Right.
I remember reading once, was it a Mark Baker, one of my favorite authors, he did a book about cops, and one cop complained to Mark, he said, there's a bit of an organized crime element to it. In other words, that code of silence, he's a stand-up guy. And he said and then sadly that can apply to police. In other words, he won't rat out on, if he sees something wrong, he won't rat out on. He said, actually, that type of mentality can go way too far. And this was back in the early 80s when that book came out. And, that was like over 36 years ago. And now you're seeing it even greater. How
about Serpico, which predated that?
Yeah.
And that was very real.
Yeah, I mean, and look in the deep South during Jim Crow. I mean, people always ask, why is it African Americans are so distrustful of police? Because, hey, during Jim Crow, especially in the deep South, the local clan also happened to be also your local sheriff. So as one civil rights leader said, your so-called protector was also your oppressor. So, I mean, I'll tell you, if let's say Biden wins, please, dear God, please, and the Democrats get the Senate, if you're going to have some type of national federal police reform bill, one thing you have to have is this: any membership in a white supremacist or anti-government or any organization that calls for the violation or deprivation of civil rights, of any person, automatic forfeiture of you lose your job as a police officer and forfeiture of benefits, loss of benefits, everything and all of that. In other words, you can't do both. You cannot do both. You have to choose one or the other. Can't do both.
And they're talking about making a network now that if you lose your position as a police officer in one jurisdiction, you can't go over state lines or whatever and become a cop anywhere else.
Precisely. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Absolutely. And here's another thing I want to add, Ralph. I've been thinking about this, all these white supremacist organizations and militia. And 50 years ago, exactly 50 years ago, Ralph, that's when Congress passed the RICO law. That was, the famous RICO law that was used to attack the Italian mafia and has always been extremely effective. If you could do that to combat the Italian mafia, what I would like to do, if Biden and the Democrats take the Senate and keep the House, is pass new legislation, kind of like a RICO law that goes after these white racist organizations, these white supremacist things, these anti-Semitic organizations, that takes on the Klan, the militias, the neo-Nazis. In other words, specific type legislation, whereas like RICO, if you commit crimes under the umbrella of the mafia, the penalties are like 40 to life, whereas if you were just an average Joe Blow, it would be like 5 to 10. I would apply this here to the same thing, to the Klansmen, to the neo-Nazis, all those fascist, racist, anti-Semitic, and homophobic groups. They're saying, okay, you commit any type of intimidation or anything, instead of 5 to 10, which you can do standing on your head, and you get out in 3, you got to do like 20, minimum 15 to 20 or 40 to life if it's a racist murder or something like that. Specific legislation that combats these white supremacist organizations once and for all. That's one thing I would extremely advocate. I advocate for.
Beautiful. Hey, Matthew, terrific podcast. Time flew.
Thank you.
And I love your company on and off the air. Please continue to continue.
Thank you, Ralph. And Ralph, a year ago, I got started with my own podcast, and it was all because of you, because you had faith in me, Ralph. And I thank you, and I love you, Brian. Be safe,
All right,
okay?
buddy.
And keep smoking.
I don't have faith in many people, by the way, so that's a high compliment.
Okay, and keep smoking, my friend. Keep smoking.
You don't have to tell me. I have no choice. I grow it legally indoors in California, and I have access to just as much as I need. I grow it for my and that's all I ever wanted. And you could have a dream, and it can come true. So that's America. God bless us. Listen. Here. Okay, I just passed you a virtual J. Have a great one, Matthew. Enjoy your day. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm Ralph Tycho, the weak link of it all. Absolutely that. Happy trails.
Happy trails, Ralph.
Bye, Matthew.
Bye-bye.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned Network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices, and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.